And the California governor's office both confirm actor and director Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle have died in a, quote, tragic.
In the quiet hills of an affluent Los Angeles neighborhood, a tragedy unfolded that no one could have imagined. The grand mansion owned by renowned Hollywood filmmaker Robert Reiner and his wife Michelle had always been seen as a place of warmth, creativity, and family unity. For decades, it stood behind tall trees and iron gates, offering privacy and peace to a family deeply rooted in the entertainment world. Neighbors often described the house as calm and welcoming, a sharp contrast to the noise and pressure of Hollywood just miles away. That peaceful image, however, was shattered in a single day when emergency sirens pierced the silence and turned the home into the center of mystery that would soon grip the nation. First, authorities believe the incident was a heartbreaking family tragedy. When paramedics arrived at the scene, they found Robert and Michelle lifeless inside their own home. The shock spread quickly through the neighborhood, then across the media, as news broke that one of Hollywood's most respected figures had died under disturbing circumstances. Friends, colleagues, and fans struggled to understand how a man known for storytelling, humor, and emotional depth could meet such a dark end. The mansion that once hosted joyful gatherings and thoughtful conversations was suddenly sealed off. Surrounded by police tape and flashing lights, AS investigators began their work. Small details immediately raised troubling questions. There were no signs of forced entry. The home's advanced security system, designed to alert authorities at the first sign of danger, had remained silent. Inside, the atmosphere felt heavy, almost as if the walls themselves were hiding something. Rooms were left untouched. Furniture stood in place, and yet the sense of unease was impossible to ignore. What initially appeared to be a simple case began to feel far more complex. The discovery of the bodies deeply affected everyone involved. Officers described the scene as emotionally difficult, even for those with years of experience. Robert was found in a common living area, while Michelle lay in the kitchen, a place where she had often prepared meals for her family. The contrast between the normal setting and the violent outcome made the situation even more disturbing. This was not a dark alley or an abandoned building. This was a home filled with memories, laughter, and shared history. As word spread, public attention quickly intensified. News outlets rushed to cover the story, while social media filled with speculation and unanswered questions. How could something so violent happen in such a protected space? Why had no alarm been triggered? And most importantly, was this truly a personal family matter, or was there something much larger hiding beneath the surface? Within hours, the investigation took an unexpected turn. Local police began to receive instructions to preserve the scene more carefully than usual. Certain rooms were restricted, and additional forensic teams were brought in. Quiet conversations between officers hinted that this case might not stay in local hands for long. There were whispers that Robert's life extended far beyond filmmaking, that his influence and connections reached into areas rarely discussed in public. Family members were placed under intense emotional strain, grief mixed with confusion, as they tried to process the sudden loss while being questioned about details of daily life. The house that once symbolized safety now felt cold and distant. Every object, every photograph, every hallway became part of a growing puzzle. What no one yet realized was that this was only the beginning. Beneath the polished floors and classic wooden walls of the mansion, secrets waited quietly, hidden for years. Secrets that would soon force investigators to question everything they thought they knew. The tragedy of Robert and Michelle Reiner was no longer just about loss. It was about truth, power, and a mystery that threatened to reach far beyond the gates of a single home. Long before tragedy struck, the mansion owned by Robert and Michelle Reiner was known as more than just a luxury home. Built many decades earlier, the house carried a sense of history that could be felt the moment someone stepped inside. Wide hallways, old wooden floors, and carefully preserved architectural details gave the mansion a timeless character. It was not designed to impress with modern excess, but to offer comfort, privacy, and a feeling of permanence. Robert often said the house reminded him of stability, something he had dreamed of long before success came into his life. For him, the mansion was not a symbol of wealth, but a place where his family could grow without the constant pressure of public attention. Over the years, the home became the center of family life. Weekends were often filled with laughter, shared meals, and long conversations that stretched late into the night. The Reiners children frequently returned home, Even as adults, drawn back by familiarity and the warmth of their parents' presence, Michelle took great pride in maintaining the house, making sure it felt welcoming rather than intimidating. The kitchen was always active, filled with the smell of coffee in the mornings and home-cooked meals in the evenings. Friends who visited often described the mansion as surprisingly humble for someone of Robert's fame. Yet the house also served another purpose, one far less visible. As Robert's influence grew beyond film, the mansion quietly became a place where serious discussions took place. Guests included artist thinkers and occasionally individuals connected to political and social movements. These gatherings were never loud or public. They were calm, private meetings held behind closed doors, where ideas were exchanged freely and without cameras. Robert believed deeply in social responsibility and often used his voice to support causes he felt mattered. Over time, this placed him in contact with powerful people, some of whom admired his honesty, while others viewed it as a threat. Despite this, life inside the home remained balanced. Robert worked. Michelle supported the family, and together they tried to protect their children from the darker sides of fame and influence. Still, not everything was perfect. Like many families, they faced struggles that were kept private. One of their sons, Nicholas, had battled personal demons for years. Addiction, recovery, and emotional distance had left scars on the entire family. Recently, Nicholas had returned home after completing a rehabilitation program, hoping to rebuild trust and stability. His return brought cautious hope. The family believed that being together again might help heal old wounds that on the surface, things appeared calm. Neighbors noticed nothing unusual. There were no loud arguments, no public signs of trouble. The mansion continued to stand quietly, hidden behind greenery and fences, just another elegant home in a wealthy area. That sense of normalcy is what made the tragedy so difficult to understand. How could such violence occur in a place that seemed so carefully protected, both physically and emotionally? As investigators later reviewed the timeline of events, they began to realize that the house itself played a key role in what happened. Its age, design, and hidden spaces raised questions that had never been asked before. Certain areas of the mansion were rarely used. Old storage rooms, unused hallways, and forgotten corners existed simply because the house was so large. What once felt like charming features now appeared suspicious. The more authorities learned about Robert's private life, the more complicated the picture became. He was not just a filmmaker or a family man. He was someone who carried information, opinions, and experiences that extended into powerful circles. Whether he intended it or not, those connections may have placed his family in danger. The mansion, once a symbol of safety and belonging, now stood as a silent witness to everything Robert had built, and everything that may have led to his downfall. What investigators did not yet know was that the house still had more to reveal. Beneath its familiar rooms and comforting memories, something hidden waited to be discovered, something that would change the direction of the investigation entirely. The morning the tragedy was discovered began like any other, quiet and unremarkable, which made what followed even more devastating. When one of the Raines family members arrived at the mansion and received no response at the door, concern quickly turned into fear. Inside, the silence felt unnatural, heavy in a way that made every step echo too loudly. The sight that followed would haunt everyone involved for years to come. Robert and Michelle Raines were found lifeless inside the home they had built their lives around, transforming a place of love into a scene of unimaginable loss. Emergency services arrived quickly, but there was nothing they could do. The news spread rapidly, leaving friends, neighbors, and the public stunned. AS police secured the property. Early assumptions formed almost immediately. There were no broken windows, no damaged doors, and no signs an outsider had forced their way inside. The mansion appeared sealed, calm, and untouched from the outside. Inside, however, the reality was far different. The injuries suggested violence, and the precision of what investigators observed raised unsettling questions. This was not an accident. It was deliberate, yet nothing pointed clearly to how or why it happened. Attention soon turned inward, toward the family itself. Nicholas Raines, the couple's son, was already under emotional strain from years of personal struggle. His recent return home after rehabilitation placed him physically at the center of the situation. Within hours, He became the focus of intense scrutiny. Officers questioned him carefully, while media outlets began circulating his name almost immediately. The speed at which suspicion formed was startling. Grief had barely settled, yet judgment arrived swiftly. Before the sun had fully set that day, Nicholas was taken into custody. Images of him being escorted by police spread across television and social media, shaping public opinion before any official conclusions were reached. His expression appeared distant, almost numb, as if the weight of the moment had drained him of emotion. To many watching, the arrest felt like a solution, a way to explain the unexplainable. To others, it felt rushed, too convenient for a case filled with unanswered questions. Inside the mansion, officers continued their work in silence. Every object was photographed, every room examined. Still, nothing clearly tied Nicholas to crime in a way that felt complete. No weapon was immediately connected to him. No clear timeline explained how events unfolded so quickly and so violently. Yet the narrative outside the gates was already forming. A troubled son, a tragic past, a breaking point. It was a story people understood, and that familiarity made it easy to accept. Neighbors were divided. Some reported hearing Ray's voices earlier, though none could confirm exact times or details. Others insisted they had noticed nothing unusual at all. The lack of consistency only deepened the mystery. If something had gone wrong inside the house, how had it happened without alerting anyone nearby? And why had the sophisticated security system remained silent throughout the night? As Nicholas was removed from the scene, a strange stillness returned to property. Police remained stationed outside, but the urgency felt unresolved. It was as if something important had been missed. Several officers privately questioned whether the case had truly been understood. The decision to arrest Nicholas so quickly seemed driven by pressure rather than certainty. That pressure came from everywhere. The media demanded answers. The public demanded closure. And the authorities faced growing attention due to Robert Reiner's status and influence. Closing the case quickly would offer relief, but doing so without certainty carried serious consequences. Despite this, the official direction appeared set. What most people did not know was that the investigation was far from over. Behind closed doors, concerns were quietly raised. Certain details did not align. Certain gaps refused to disappear. And within the walls of the mansion, something unseen still waited. While the world focused on Nicholas Reiner as the possible cause of the tragedy, the house itself held secrets that could shift blame, rewrite timelines, and expose a far more complicated truth. The arrest may have satisfied the public for the moment, but for those who continued to search carefully, it felt like only the first step into a much darker and deeper story as night settled over a quiet neighborhood. An unexpected development changed everything. While local police continued to guard the mansion, unmarked vehicles arrived without warning. Their presence was subtle but unmistakable. Federal investigators had officially stepped into case. This sudden escalation surprised even experienced officers on site. Cases involving domestic tragedy rarely required federal involvement, especially so early. The decision signaled that what had happened inside the Reiner mansion was no longer being viewed as a simple family matter. Something larger, something more sensitive, had caught the attention of authorities at the highest level. The arrival of federal agents immediately altered the atmosphere. Conversations became shorter, movements more controlled. Access to certain areas of the house was restricted, and evidence handling protocols were tightened. The lead investigator, known for his careful and methodical approach, moved through the mansion slowly, observing everything without speaking much. He paid close attention to the structure of the home, its layout, and its hidden spaces. To him, the house itself seemed to tell a story, one that had not yet been fully understood. The reason for federal involvement soon became clearer. Robert Reiner was not only a filmmaker, but also a vocal figure in political and social discussions. Over the years, he has supported causes, attended private meetings, and communicated with individuals whose influence extended far beyond Hollywood. While none of this was illegal, it placed him in proximity to sensitive conversations and powerful interests. Federal authorities were concerned that the mansion might contain information requiring special handling, information that local law enforcement was not equipped to manage. Agents began a more detailed search of the property. They examined walls, floors, and architectural features that dated back decades. Older homes often contained hidden compartments and used passages or sealed-off rooms, and this mansion was no exception. As they worked, a growing sense of tension filled the space. Every step echoed, every door creaked, and every shadow seemed heavier than before. The house felt different now, no longer a family residence, but a locked container of unanswered questions. Meanwhile, outside the gates, speculation exploded. News reports mentioned federal involvement, which immediately fueled theories. If the case was truly simple, people wondered, why bring in national authorities? The arrest of Nicholas Raines suddenly appeared less certain in the public eye. Online discussions shifted tone. Some began to question whether he had been arrested too quickly. Others wondered if he was being used to draw attention away from something more dangerous. Inside the mansion, agents focused on areas that had been overlooked during the initial search. Storage rooms, rarely used offices, and old sections of the house were carefully examined. The investigators moved quietly, aware that whatever they might find could change the direction of the case entirely. Their goal was not just to understand how Robert and Michelle died, but as hours passed. The investigation uncovered irregularities that could not be ignored. Records showed that certain security features had been adjusted manually. This suggested knowledge of the system that went beyond casual familiarity. Whoever had been inside the house that night appeared to know exactly where to go and how to move without drawing attention. This detail alone raised serious concerns. It hinted at planning rather than impulse. The federal team also reviewed Robert's recent activities. Emails, calendars, and private notes were examined for signs of stress or fear. While much of his writing reflected a man deeply invested in his family, some entries suggested unease. He wrote about feeling watched, about pressure he could not fully explain. These details, while vague, added weight to the idea that the tragedy might have been influenced by forces outside the family. By the end of the night, one conclusion was clear. The arrest of Nicholas Raines, while not dismissed, was no longer enough to explain what had happened. The mansion held more secrets than anyone had expected, and federal authorities were now committed to uncovering them. What began as a devastating family loss was quickly evolving into a case filled with uncertainty, hidden connections, and growing fear, and deep within the structure of the house. Something remained unseen, waiting for the moment it would finally come to light in the early hours of the following morning. The investigation reached a turning point that no one had expected. After hours of slow and careful searching, a federal agent noticed something unusual in a rarely used study on the lower floor of the mansion. One wall panel looked slightly misaligned, its edges worn differently from the surrounding wood. At first glance, it seemed like nothing more than age-related damage. But when the panel was pressed, it shifted inward with a soft, hollow sound. What appeared to be a solid wall was actually concealing something hidden behind it. When the panel was fully opened, it revealed a narrow passage leading into a concealed room. The air inside was cold and stale, untouched for years. This space was not marked on any official blueprints of the house. It was small but carefully built, clearly designed to remain unnoticed. The discovery immediately changed the tone of the investigation. This was no longer just a crime scene. It was a place built for secrecy. Inside the hidden room, investigators found shelves lined with old boxes, folders, and electronic storage devices. Some materials dated back decades, while others appeared more recent. There were handwritten notes, private correspondence, and documents that suggested Robert Raines had been collecting information quietly over many years. While none of the materials were immediately identified as illegal, their nature raised serious questions. Why keep such records hidden? And why go to such lengths to conceal them inside his own home? The agents worked methodically, cataloging every item before removing it. As they reviewed the contents, patterns began to emerge. Many of the documents referenced meetings, conversations, and events that had never been made public. Some names appeared repeatedly, connected to political causes, financial interests, and private negotiations. Robert had always been open about his beliefs, but these records suggested a deeper involvement than anyone realized. He was not just speaking out publicly. He was observing, recording, and preserving details others might want forgotten. This discovery forced investigators to reconsider the motive behind the tragedy. If someone had known about this hidden room, They might have believed Robert possessed information that could damage reputations or expose secrets. The idea that the crime was committed to retrieve or silence such knowledge suddenly seemed possible. Even more troubling was the realization that some materials appeared to be missing. Empty spaces on shelves suggested that not everything had been left behind. Attention quickly turned back to the night of the deaths. Whoever entered the mansion appeared to know exactly where to go. The security system adjustments, the lack of forced entry, and now the hidden room all pointed towards someone with detailed knowledge of the house. This was not the act of confused or emotional family member acting on impulse. It suggested planning, awareness, and purpose. Outside the mansion, news of the discovery was tightly controlled. Only a small group of officials knew what had been found. Federal authorities feared that public knowledge could compromise the investigation or put others at risk. However, rumors began to circulate. Whispers of secret rooms and hidden documents slowly made their way into media discussions, fueling speculation and fear. For Nicholas Raines, still in custody, the discovery brought both hope and heartbreak. On one hand, it introduced evidence that could support his innocence. On the other, it revealed that his father had been carrying a burden he had never shared with his family. The idea that Robert's private actions might place them all in danger was difficult to accept. As dawn broke, the mansion stood quiet once again, but it no longer felt like a family home. It had become a symbol of unanswered questions and hidden truths. Investigators now faced a far more complex task. They were no longer just seeking a killer. They were trying to understand what Robert Raines knew, who else knew about